Today we're diving into the wonderful world of oil painting. If you've ever thought that they were too tricky or maybe just for professional artists, then I'm here to prove you wrong. So oil painting can seem a little bit intimidating, but it's okay. Let's break it down into 4 easy stages. We're going to prepare our surface. We're going to sketch in using oil paint, then we're going to block in some colour, and then we're going to finish up with some details. I've got some oil painting paper here, but it's a little bit too white, so I want to knock that back with a nice ground. That's what's called when you just paint over it with a thin layer of paint. I'm using some burnt sienna here. You can't dilute oil paint with water, it won't work, so you need some solvent from an art shop. I've diluted it here to a nice thin wash. And literally just a nice big brush just to cover up that paper. So we've done our ground, and I'm now going to start sketching in with paint. We're going to be using a slightly thicker mix of solvent and oil paint than the ground, but these are our initial marks, so don't go too dark too soon. Don't get too bogged down with what you're actually painting, just enjoy pushing the oil paint around and seeing what happens. I'm just really trying to identify the darkest shapes that I can see on the face. So we're using this as our sort of tonal map. The next stage is going to be to block in the main features. Keep things simple. I'm basically working just with 2 tubes of paint, the burnt sienna and titanium white. And I've basically added a little bit of white to each of these to give a really nice tonal variety. I've just added a small bit of solvent to my brush. We don't want it that kind of watery consistency anymore. I want to start seeing a little bit of colour and tone. So I always work with oil paint from dark to light. It just means that paint that you're applying, it gets less muddy. If you work the other way round, it's much easier to get muddy because the dark paints drag the white that's underneath it. So I would really encourage you to experiment with oil paint, but something just to bear in mind is the fat over lean principle. And all that means is that as you're applying paint in layers, it needs to be more oily or fat over leaner, more solventy layers, which is what we've done here. You can see the ground that we've got here. We've had quite a lot of solvent in, and the layers that we're using now are much thicker straight out of the tube. We don't want to have anything too oily underneath anything too lean because it will crack. Because oil paint stays wet, it means you can work back into it. But the downside of that is also that it can be really easy to make it really muddy. We've avoided that already today by just using 1 colour and the tube of white paint. Other things, keeping a really nice, clean, tidy, organised palette. That will help you avoid mud because your colours aren't kind of annoying each other. Keep your brushes clean, so I always try and wipe the colours off the brush before I put it into a new tone or a new colour. And don't use your solvent like water. Don't swoosh it about, otherwise then you'll have dirty solvent and then that'll be hard to get clean brushes from. So I'm now moving to a smaller brush, and then we're going to finish up with some details. I do think a lot of oil painting is getting yourself into a pickle and then trying to get yourself back out of that pickle. My current pickle is that I'm not quite feeling this far side of my daughter's face, so I just need to make sure that I can kind of keep going back and forth and pushing and pulling that edge. The paint will let me do that. Because it stays wet, I'm just working my way through it. I'm just using a sort of very rough but dry hog hair brush here and just softening those edges. There's a tendency once you learn how to do this that you suddenly go, ooh, this is nice, and then by the time you finish, you've covered everything in a sort of smooth, blended filter. But I think a bit of blending in the right places can be really effective. I'm just going to put the highlights in here to the eye. A little bit of highlight on the lips. So there we have it, a simple oil painting. I hope you've felt inspired to give it a go. Oil painting is your friend. You just need to learn to walk before you can run. And once you can run, you can really go wild.